Before the first step toward the summit, the Sherpas had already done the math. Too many climbers, too little time, too much cold, and in that thin air, they knew something the team did not. This climb was already doomed. May 18th, 2019. South Col Route, Mount Everest. Temperature at departure, minus 27 degrees Celsius. Wind chill pushing it closer to minus 40. The jet stream had shifted just far enough north to open a narrow window. Less than 24 hours of manageable wind. Clear skies. No incoming storm cells. On paper, it was acceptable. Michael Turner, 46, from Seattle, Washington, stood outside his tent at Camp 4 adjusting the seal on his oxygen mask. A corporate attorney, precise, structured, he believed risk could be reduced to calculation. 2 years of training had led to this morning. Beside him was Nima Dorji, his lead Sherpa from the Khumbu region. Nima spoke little. He didn't need to. He watched the ridge instead of the sky. Headlamps stretched upward from the South Col like a slow-moving constellation. More than 300 climbers had chosen this exact night. Weeks of unstable weather had compressed every expedition into a single push. The fixed ropes were already set from the balcony to the Hillary step. Oxygen caches staged, anchors placed. The system was ready. It was also crowded beyond design. At 11:20 p.m., the first teams moved out. Crampons bit into wind-hardened snow. Regulators hissed softly in the dark. Each climber carried a private equation. Oxygen supply divided by time, strength divided by distance. By 2:30 a.m., movement above the balcony slowed. By 4 a.m., it stopped. From below, yet it looked controlled, an orderly queue waiting its turn. From above, it looked different, a line of human bodies standing still in the death zone, where the body consumes itself for warmth and oxygen drains steadily from steel cylinders. Nima counted the headlamps. He did not like the number. The weather window was real, the sky was clear, the wind was calm, but something essential had already begun to run out long before sunrise. Time. Michael Turner did not see himself as reckless. At 46, he had built a career around eliminating uncertainty. As a senior corporate attorney in Seattle, he specialized in high-stakes mergers where a single overlooked clause could collapse an entire deal. His colleagues described him as calm under pressure, controlled, methodical. He approached Everest the same way. 2 years of preparation. In structured altitude training in Colorado, winter ascents on Mount Rainier, ice courses in British Columbia, cardiovascular data logged daily, body fat reduced, resting heart rate optimized. He read expedition reports the way other people read novels. He believed discomfort could be trained. He believed suffering could be budgeted. What he did not fully appreciate was deterioration. At home, he was steady. Married for 19 years to Claire, one daughter in high school. He rarely spoke about proving anything, but the summit had become symbolic, a private audit of his own limits. He told friends he wasn't chasing glory. He was chasing completion. There had been smaller warning signs during the expedition. A lingering cough after acclimatization at Camp 3. Slightly slower rotations between camps compared to his training benchmarks. Nothing dramatic, nothing disqualifying. On the South Col, before departure, he double-checked his oxygen system twice. He tightened straps meticulously. He rehearsed the sequence of movements for the Hillary step in his head. Nima watched him closely. Sherpas develop a quiet metric for clients. Not strength alone, but awareness. How often they remove gloves unnecessarily. How they respond to minor setbacks. Whether they admit weakness early. Michael smiled often. He nodded when asked if he felt strong. Strong enough, he said again before clipping into the fixed line. Above 8,000 meters, honesty becomes survival equipment. Michael did not lie out of ego. He lied because everything he had invested, time, money, discipline, identity, converged on this single morning. Turning back would fracture the narrative he had built about himself. He believed the summit was a controlled objective. The Sherpas understood something else. On Everest, control is temporary, exposure is cumulative, and the body keeps a different ledger than ambition. Above the South Col, the southeast ridge is not wild chaos. It is engineered passage. Every season, teams of Sherpas move ahead of clients to prepare the route. They carry coils of fixed rope, aluminum ladders, snow pickets, ice screws, carabiners. They build a vertical system across unstable terrain, a temporary highway anchored into snow, ice, and fractured rock. The fixed ropes run from anchor to anchor, A snow picket is driven deep into compact wind slab at a calculated angle, designed primarily to resist downward force. Ice screws are twisted into blue ice where available, their threads biting into frozen density. On exposed rock sections, pitons or bolts are placed where cracks allow. The system works when weight moves predictably. Climbers attach mechanical ascenders to the rope. The device grips when weighted and slides when unweighted. One hand advances the ascender. One foot steps higher, the other follows. Slow, repetitive, vertical. Crampons, 12 steel points, distribute body weight across surfaces that may be no thicker than a few centimeters of ice over stone. Placement must be precise. Front points penetrate. Secondary points stabilize. A slight misalignment transfers load unpredictably. Above 8,400 meters, near the balcony, the route narrows. Passing another climber requires unclipping from one rope and temporarily trusting a second. During congestion, this creates moments where attachment is singular, not redundant. It's the Hillary Step, a near-vertical rock outcrop just below the summit ridge, forms the most significant choke point. Even after partial structural changes from the 2015 earthquake, the section demands focused movement. One climber ascends while another descends. Each must coordinate unclipping and reclipping around anchors layered from previous seasons. The system depends on flow. When movement stops, oxygen continues to drain. Cylinders typically carry enough supply for a summit push if progress is steady. But delays convert reserves into liability. Anchors are placed assuming gradual loading, steady body weight transferred vertically. They are not designed for sudden lateral shock from a falling climber swinging outward from the ridge. Congestion introduces unpredictability. On May 18th, more than 300 climbers compressed into the same sequence of anchors and rope segments. Each added weight, each added tension, each added time. Sherpas moved along the line, checking regulators, brushing frost from masks, tightening loose carabiners. They understood the fragility. The mountain was not chaotic. It was a mechanical chain of components. Boot to crampon, crampon to ice, ascender to rope, rope to anchor, anchor to snow. Every link depended on the one before it. And on that morning, the chain was under strain long before anyone fell. The first warning did not look dramatic. It came quietly, just after sunrise. At approximately 6:40 a.m., the sun reached the upper ridge. Light spread across the southeast ridge, turning the snow gold. From below, it appeared hopeful, a clean summit day. But temperature did not rise with the light. Michael had been standing below the Hillary Step for nearly 40 minutes. The line ahead had stalled again. Climbers were negotiating the narrow rock section one at a time. Movement above was careful, slow. His right boot felt tighter than before. He flexed his toes inside the insulated liner. The left responded normally, the right big toe did not. Not pain, not yet, just dull pressure. He shifted weight, assuming circulation would return when the line advanced. Nima noticed the subtle movement. "You okay?" he asked quietly through his mask. Michael nodded. "Just waiting." Waiting was the problem. Above 8,800 meters, the human body is not built to stand still. Oxygen saturation drops even while resting. Core temperature declines incrementally. Judgment softens at the edges. Michael bent slightly to adjust his carabiner. When he straightened, a brief wave of dizziness passed through him. It lasted less than 2 seconds. He did not mention it. His oxygen cylinder had been running since late the previous night. The gauge needle was no longer comfortably above midpoint. He increased the flow rate slightly, from 2 liters per minute to 3, to compensate for rising breathlessness. The adjustment felt minor. It shortened his margin. Above them, a descending climber fumbled a rope transition. The fixed line tightened unexpectedly, then slackened again. The delay extended. The sun climbed higher, but warmth did not follow. Inside his boot, the right big toe stopped signaling entirely. Pain is warning. Numbness is progression. Michael told himself it would resolve at the summit, once movement resumed. He did not want to introduce doubt into a morning already stretched thin. The Sherpas were counting time. Michael was counting meters remaining. The first crack in the system was not equipment failure. It was silence. Inside a boot, inside a body, inside a decision left unspoken. By 8:10 a.m., the line had advanced less than 30 vertical meters. The summit was visible now, close enough to distort judgment. A white dome against a pale blue sky, deceptively near. Michael had been above 8,700 meters for hours. The wind was not violent. It did not need to be. Even at 15 to 20 kilometers per hour, moving air strips the thin boundary layer of warmth surrounding the body. Heat loss becomes continuous, invisible. He shifted his weight again. No response from the right big toe. Inside the boot, moisture from sweat had cooled. Insulation compresses under prolonged standing, reducing trapped air, the primary barrier against cold. Circulation slows in extremities first. The body preserves core temperature by sacrificing fingers and toes. Michael's breathing grew louder inside the mask. Each inhale pulled thin air mixed with supplemental oxygen. Each exhale condensed and froze along the regulator's rim. Nima brushed ice away with a gloved hand. "How much left?" Nima asked, tapping the cylinder. Michael glanced at the gauge. The needle hovered near the lower quarter. "Enough," he replied. Enough was relative. At 3 liters per minute, a standard Summit bottle can empty faster than expected during delays. Increased breathing from mild hypoxia accelerates depletion. Anxiety increases breathing further. Ahead, the climbers unclipped and reclipped around the Hillary step in slow sequence. Every transition took longer than projected. Thick gloves, reduced dexterity, fatigue. A descending climber brushed against Michael while negotiating past. The contact was minor, but it shifted his stance off balance. He corrected himself with the fixed rope. Small corrections accumulate strain. His left hand began responding slower to commands. Not frozen, just delayed. Cognitive processing above 8,000 meters declines measurably. Reaction time extends. Fine motor coordination weakens. Decision-making narrows toward immediate objectives. Summit. Just summit. The line stopped again. Minutes passed. The sun rose higher, but shadows from the ridge still cut across the route. Michael stood half in light, half in cold shade. The difference in temperature across that boundary was subtle but significant. His oxygen hissed steadily. Below them, more headlamps were still ascending. The system had become a vertical waiting room in an environment that does not permit waiting. Nothing catastrophic had happened. No storm, no avalanche, no dramatic slip. But circulation was declining. Oxygen was draining. Coordination was softening. Time was converting strength into fragility, and the mountain remained completely calm. At 9:37 a.m., Michael reached the base of the Hillary Step. The section was no longer the near vertical wall described in older expedition reports, but it remained technical. Rock protruded through ice. Old fixed ropes from prior seasons hung beside newer lines, some faded, some recently installed. Choosing the correct strand required attention. As a climber above him hesitated mid-move, the rope tightened, then slackened as weight shifted. Michael waited for the signal to proceed. When it came, he moved deliberately. Left hand advanced the ascender. Right hand stabilized on rock. Left foot stepped high onto a small ledge of compacted snow. He unclipped from the lower fixed rope. For a brief moment, he was attached by a single carabiner to the upper line. His right foot needed to rise and set onto a narrow patch of ice just above knee height. Inside the boot, the big toe did not register the edge accurately. He lifted the foot. The front points of the crampon struck rock instead of ice. Steel scraped. A short metallic sound. Sharp, brief. Normally, he would have reset the placement. Instead, he shifted weight forward. Hypoxia narrows patience. Fatigue reduces precision. And the calculation becomes simplified. Move upward. As he committed weight onto the right foot, the crampon failed to bite. His center of gravity drifted outward from the ridge. The rope above him, slightly slack from the climber's movement, did not immediately absorb tension. For less than a second, gravity acted without resistance. His right foot slid. His left foot lost purchase. His body rotated away from the mountain. Then the rope snapped tight. The force transferred instantly through harness, carabiner, rope sheath, and into the nearest anchor. The system, already strained by congestion and angle, absorbed a load it was not optimized to handle. In that moment, control passed from muscle to physics. And physics does not negotiate. The failure did not occur in a single instant. It moved through the system in sequence. Even the right crampon never achieved proper penetration. Front points require downward and inward force to bite into ice. Michael's foot struck rock at a shallow angle. With reduced sensation in the toe, feedback was delayed. When he shifted weight forward, friction was insufficient to resist gravity. Loss of friction initiated motion. As his right foot slipped, his hips drifted outward from the ridge. His center of mass moved beyond the line of support. Recovery would have required immediate counterforce through the opposite foot or a solid tool placement, but his left foot was standing on compacted snow, not hard blue ice. When his weight transferred abruptly, the surface sheared. Now both primary contact points were compromised. He was clipped into a fixed rope carrying slight slack from the climber above. As slack increases fall distance before load transfer, even a short drop dramatically multiplies force when arrested suddenly. When the rope caught, the force was not purely vertical. It was outward and downward, a pendulum load pulling away from the ridge. The nearest snow picket had been placed to resist downward pull along the normal direction of travel. It was driven into wind-packed snow at a precise angle for steady load. Under sudden lateral shock, it reacted differently. The picket shifted several centimeters, not full extraction, but enough to alter its angle and redirect stress to the next anchor in the chain. That second anchor, an aging ice screw, absorbed torque it had not been designed to take that morning. High-altitude ice develops microfractures from temperature cycling. Under abrupt load, those fractures propagate quickly. As Michael swung outward, the rope scraped across an exposed rock edge. Nylon under extreme tension against stone generates frictional heat. The sheath began to abrade. The internal core fibers assumed increasing load. With the first anchor partially displaced and the second under rotational stress, force distribution became uneven. Instead of spreading along the system, tension concentrated at the abrasion point. When nylon fibers are compromised, tensile strength declines rapidly. The rope did not explode apart. The outer sheath tore first. Several core strands held for a fraction of a second. Then they separated under sustained shock. There was no echoing crack, only the sudden release of tension. With no remaining anchor between him and the Congestion face, gravity continued uninterrupted. The system had not failed because of one catastrophic defect. It failed because multiple small stresses aligned within the same second. A numb toe, a shallow placement, a slack rope, an angled anchor, a sharp edge, each factor survivable alone. Together, they removed every remaining margin. The body remained where gravity placed it. From the ridge, Michael appeared smaller than expected, a dark shape against a white incline, partially shielded by a rock outcrop. Snow drifted intermittently across him, erasing sharp edges, softening definition. Two Sherpas descended approximately 30 meters to assess from a safer angle. They did not attempt full approach. The slope beneath the Hillary step is unstable when traversed laterally, especially under load. Through binoculars, they evaluated signs of life. There were none. The position of the neck suggested high cervical trauma. One arm lay at an unnatural angle beneath the torso. No visible chest movement, no attempt to reach for equipment. The oxygen cylinder lay farther down slope, separated during impact. At that altitude, rescue requires three conditions: immediate access, survivable injuries, and sufficient manpower with oxygen reserves. None were present. Even if he had retained consciousness, which was unlikely, the combination of spinal fracture, internal hemorrhage, and blunt cranial trauma would have made voluntary movement impossible. Blood loss at that elevation accelerates hypoxic collapse. Without oxygen support, brain function deteriorates within minutes. The decision was clinical. No retrieval attempt would be made that day. Continuing climbers were redirected around the incident area. As the line resumed its slow progression upward, movement returned to the system. The summit remained only a short distance above. By mid-afternoon, light winds continued. The weather window held exactly as forecast. The mountain did not close. It did not storm. It did not react. Michael's body cooled rapidly. Core temperature dropped toward ambient. Tissue stiffened. Internal bleeding slowed as cold preserved cellular structure. In the death zone, cold functions as a preservative. He would remain there through the season. Another fixed point on the mountain, not marked by plaque or flag, but by coordinates and memory. The Sherpas had known hours earlier that the margins were gone. The fall had only made it visible. Above 8,000 meters, death is rarely dramatic. It is procedural, and once gravity finishes its work, the mountain returns to silence. In the days that followed, the incident was reduced to data. Time of fall, approximately 9:42 a.m. Location, below the Hillary Step. Congestion face exposure. Weather, stable. Wind within forecasted range. No precipitation. Radio logs were reviewed first. Transmissions confirmed prolonged congestion between the balcony and the step. Multiple teams reported delays exceeding 90 minutes. Several climbers noted low oxygen reserves earlier than projected. Nima's brief transmission stood out for its simplicity. Climber fallen, rope failure, no movement. There was no panic in his voice, only confirmation. The rope segment later inspected showed partial sheath abrasion consistent with edge loading under tension. Core fibers displayed progressive separation, not a clean manufacturing defect. Yet the nearest snow picket had shifted under lateral torque, but was not fully extracted. The ice screw anchor exhibited rotational stress marks within fractured ice. Individually, none of these findings suggested catastrophic negligence. Collectively, they described cumulative strain. Michael's oxygen cylinder, recovered lower on the slope during a later expedition, was nearly depleted. Flow rate likely increased during congestion. Hypoxia impairs proprioception, the body's sense of limb position. Combined with frostbite development in the right big toe, precise foot placement would have been compromised. Autopsy findings conducted after partial recovery the following year confirmed immediate fatal injuries from blunt force trauma and high cervical spine fracture. As advanced frostbite was present on the right foot, stage 3, consistent with prolonged immobility in extreme cold prior to the fall. There was no single point of failure, not reckless speed, not violent weather, not defective equipment alone. It was systemic compression, too many climbers sharing a narrow mechanical chain, too much waiting in temperatures that do not forgive delay, small physiological declines unnoticed or unspoken, anchors designed for vertical load absorbing lateral shock, each factor survivable on its own. Aligned together, they removed margin. The Sherpas had sensed it before dawn, not as prophecy, but as arithmetic. They understood that Everest does not require chaos to kill, it requires patience. When movement stops above 8,000 meters, the mountain begins subtracting. Oxygen, heat, coordination, time. And when enough has been subtracted, gravity finishes the equation. The sky that day remained blue, the summit was reached by others. But the lesson remained fixed below the ridge, quiet, mechanical, and irreversible.